If you thought you'd seen it all, think again. This is Batty X, where secrets don't just leak, they explode right in front of your eyes. And today, inside a courtroom packed so tight you could hear hearts beating, Porsha Williams pulled a pin on a truth bomb so nuclear even Todd Tucker couldn't pretend to breathe. Kandi Burrows walked in confident, composed, ready to defend everything she built. But she had no idea her entire world was about to collapse in real time. The internet couldn't believe it, and you won't either, because the moment Porsha stepped forward, lifted her chin, and said, "Your Honor, there's something you need to hear," the entire room froze. Reporters, lawyers, bailiffs, even Todd. Everyone felt it. That electric tension right before a life-changing disaster hits. And here's the real question. If you were in this position, same betrayal, same threat, same public humiliation, what would you do? Would you run? Would you fight? Would you even survive it? Comment sections are already going insane. Bro said way too much and they got him. No one comes back from a truth like this. Let's break it all down. And trust me, it gets uglier. The day didn't start like a scandal. It started like a routine court appearance. Cameras outside, fans whispering, reporters praying something dramatic might happen. But no one, not even the messiest gossip blogs, expected the emotional earthquake waiting inside those walls. Kandi Burrows stepped into the courtroom first, wearing a calm expression she had practiced for weeks. Her team surrounded her like a protective shield, whispering legal strategies, telling her to stay focused, stay poised, stay unshaken. But the truth, Kandi was already cracking on the inside. She just didn't know how badly. Todd Tucker followed seconds later. He didn't stand next to her. He didn't even look in her direction. He moved like a man hiding from his own reflection. His shoulders low, his eyes glued to the floor, his breathing tight and uneven. People noticed it instantly. Something was off. Something big. Then came Porsha Williams. A hush fell over the room the second she entered. No entourage. No lawyer holding her hand. No fear written on her face. She walked in with the kind of confidence reserved for people who came not to testify, but to end illusions. Her heels echoed like countdown clicks. Even the judge lifted his eyes. Tension didn't build. It detonated. Most people knew the rumors. Whispers of Todd being emotionally distant, of Kandi working too much, of Porsha and Todd having history. But rumors are one thing. Evidence is another. And today wasn't about speculation. It was about truth. Brutal, unfiltered, reputation-destroying truth. Kandi sat stiff, fingers interlocked so tight her knuckles turned pale. She didn't look at Todd because she didn't want to see the answers in his eyes before the questions were even asked. She didn't look at Porsha either because everyone in that courtroom already knew Porsha wasn't here to play nice. She was here to burn everything down. The judge cleared his throat, trying to maintain order. "Ms. Williams, you may proceed." Porsha didn't sit. She didn't shuffle papers. She didn't need to. She stepped forward, leaned into the microphone, and with a voice colder than the room's air conditioning, she said, "You Honor, before this marriage ever began, Todd Tucker was already in a relationship with me." Gasps, loud, unrestrained gasps. A reporter literally whispered, "Oh my God." Under his breath, Todd froze. Kandi blinked so hard it looked like she was fighting back tears instantly. But Porsha wasn't finished. She continued, her voice slicing through the tension. "And after the marriage, he still came back, not once, not twice, but over 300 times. Chaos. Pure chaos." One woman in the back row stood up in disbelief. A cameraman dropped his lens. Someone whispered, 300. Like they needed confirmation from the universe. The judge hit the gavel, but it might as well have been a spoon tapping glass. Nothing could calm the room now. Kandi's hand flew to her chest. She looked at Todd, desperate for a denial, as she's lying. "Hey, this is insane." But Todd said nothing. His silence wasn't neutral. It was damning. His shoulders tightened. His eyes stayed down. And everyone watching understood. Porsha wasn't lying. Porsha stepped closer to the microphone, tilting her head just slightly, like she was preparing to finish a story she rehearsed for years. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't drama. This wasn't a mistake. She paused. This was intentional. Kandi's breathing faltered. One tear escaped, sliding down her cheek before she even registered it. Todd swallowed hard. The most movement he'd shown all morning, but still no denial. Porsha wasn't done. Not even close. She turned her gaze directly at Todd, and the entire courtroom held its breath. "You told me everything. Every complaint you had about your wife. Every moment you felt ignored. Every night you said you felt unwanted. You didn't just come to me for comfort. You came because you wanted to." A sharp, piercing pain flashed across Kandi's face. She looked at Todd, eyebrows trembling, silently begging him to say something, anything, to defend her. But he couldn't or wouldn't. His silence screamed louder than Porsha's words. Reporters scribbled frantically, fingers trembling over keyboards as they typed out the headline of the decade. Tweets were already forming in people's minds. Every eye, every camera, every breath in the room was locked onto the emotional destruction unfolding in real time. Kandi whispered, barely audible, "Stop. Please stop." But Porsha didn't. Not yet. Because this wasn't about hurting Kandi. It was about exposing Todd. And the next words Porsha spoke would begin the unraveling that would destroy the rest of the trial. "But what came next?" she said, her voice dropping into a dark, steady whisper. Even his enemies didn't expect. And that's exactly where part one ends. Even his enemies didn't expect. Because in that moment, the courtroom didn't feel like a courtroom anymore. It felt like a confession chamber, a place where truth wasn't spoken softly, but ripped out of people like a root they'd spent years burying. Todd finally lifted his head, eyes red, jaw tight, like he knew the next blow was coming, and he still couldn't protect himself from it. And Porsha, she didn't hesitate. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small, worn envelope, the kind that looked too old to be part of a modern scandal, but dangerous enough to make the entire room fall silent. The judge leaned forward. Todd stiffened. Kandi inhaled sharply. "These," Porsha said, holding the envelope between two fingers, "are notes Todd wrote to me during the years he claimed to be repairing his marriage." The whole courtroom shifted. People leaned forward like they physically needed to see the inside of that envelope. Even the baifs looked torn, between keeping order and needing the tea for themselves. Porsha opened it slowly, deliberately, like she enjoyed watching Todd's soul leave his body inch by inch. Inside were handwritten pages, real handwriting, the kind with uneven letters and emotional chaos trapped between ink strokes. "One night," Porsha read. He wrote, "I feel alive with you. I feel seen. I don't go home because I want to. I go because I have to." Kandi's lips parted as the air left her lungs. She didn't scream. She didn't argue. She just stared at Todd like she was looking at a stranger who had been living in her house, eating her food, sleeping beside her while loving someone else in a completely different world. Todd slammed his hand on the table. Enough. But the judge shut him down instantly. "Mr. Tucker, sit down." The command snapped through the room like electricity. Todd fell silent, breathing hard, unable to hide the panic tightening around his throat. Porsha continued. "Another note," she said, scanning the page. "The worst part is she thinks we're fine. She thinks I'm happy. I feel guilty, but not enough to stop." A collective gasp shot across the courtroom. Someone whispered. He wrote that like they couldn't believe any grown man would put that level of emotional disloyalty on paper. Kandi covered her mouth as tears streamed down her face. She wasn't crying quietly anymore. She was breaking in front of everyone. Her shoulders trembled, her knees buckled slightly, and the bailiff behind her stepped closer, ready to catch her again if she fell. Todd's face crumpled into something between guilt and defeat. He looked like a man losing a war he never prepared to fight. Porsha wasn't reading the notes for entertainment. She wasn't reading them to drag Kandi. She was reading them because Todd had painted her as a temporary escape when he needed her to be more. She was holding him accountable for every word he had whispered in the dark. "Ms. Williams," the judge said carefully, Do you have additional evidence? Porsha nodded almost too calmly. Yes, Your Honor. She held up a USB drive, small, silver, deadly. This, she said, contains voice recordings, private conversations Todd had with me where he admitted things he never said to his wife. The courtroom erupted again. Reporters nearly climbed over each other. A producer from a gossip network began crying because he knew this footage would break viewing records. But Kandi, she looked like the floor had disappeared beneath her. Her hands trembled so violently, she couldn't even wipe her tears properly. She repeated one phrase over and over, not loud, but broken. Why would you do this? Why would you do this? Todd turned to her, voice shaking. I made mistakes. Kandi, I never wanted. No, she choked out. You never wanted the truth to come out. That's what you never wanted. The judge ordered the USB to be submitted, but he didn't play it yet. He wanted the room calm first, which was impossible. The tension was suffocating. Then came the shift no one expected. Porsha stepped away from the microphone, looked directly at Kandi and said, he didn't stop coming to me because he loved you. He stopped because he was scared of being exposed. Todd's head snapped toward her. Porsha, stop. But she didn't. She leaned back into the mic, voice steady. You told me yourself. Todd, you said leaving her would ruin your finances.
You said the marriage
made you look stable.
You said I never said that.
Todd shouted. But even the judge didn't believe that denial. Todd's reaction was too fast, too emotional, too loud. And his eyes, those gave him away completely. Kandi stared at him like she was seeing him clearly for the first time in her entire life. You stayed for money, she whispered. For image, for convenience. The pain in her voice was so raw, the entire room went silent. Todd reached toward her instinctively, but she recoiled like he was fire. Don't touch me.
Don't even look at me.
People in the audience were crying. Even reporters felt uncomfortable witnessing a woman lose her marriage, her trust, and her dignity in front of strangers who would turn it into headlines by sunset. But Porsha still wasn't finished. There's one more thing, she said quietly. The judge sighed. He already knew it wasn't something small. Proceed. Porsha took a slow breath. Todd told me, if she ever divorces me, I'll marry you instead. Silence. Heavy, crushing, endless. Silence. Then the explosion. Kandi screamed. An actual scream. Sharp, guttural, the kind that rips through a person's chest. She collapsed onto the bench as her entire body shook uncontrollably. Reporters jumped up. Someone yelled for water. A bailiff rushed forward. Todd went pale, then red, then pale again. He didn't deny it. He couldn't. His silence confirmed everything all over again. The judge demanded order, but there was none left. The courtroom wasn't a legal space anymore. It was a battlefield covered in emotional wreckage. Todd buried his face in his hands. His shoulders shook. For the first time, he looked truly broken. But that didn't matter anymore. The damage was done. And then came the final spiral, the moment that pushed this scandal from destructive to catastrophic. Porsha pulled out one last sheet of paper, a signature page. Todd's handwriting, a date, a location, and a line that read, "This stays between us until I'm ready." Kandi stared at it like her heart had been stabbed. The room went silent again. But this time, it wasn't the silence before. Destruction. It was the silence after something sacred had already died. And just when everyone thought the storm had reached its peak, another name came up. Another name came up. It drifted through the courtroom like a cold draft. Subtle at first, then undeniable. Porsha didn't say it immediately. She just unfolded the second page slowly, her eyes flicking toward Todd like she was waiting for him to stop her. But Todd didn't move. His hands were still covering his face, his elbows on the table, like he couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't undo a single word he'd spoken in the dark.
Kandi
wiped her cheeks with trembling hands, bracing herself for whatever came next. She had already taken blow after blow. Humiliation, betrayal, emotional destruction. But now she sensed something deeper, something worse, something she wasn't prepared for. Porsha finally lifted the page. Yo, Anna, she said, her voice steady but heavy. This isn't just about Todd and me. He confided in someone else, too. Someone closer to Kandi than any of us realized. The room tightened instantly. You could feel bodies lean forward. Even the cameras stopped shaking. Everyone sensed it. Another twist that would flip everything upside down again. The judge leaned back, eyes narrowing. M. Williams, who? Porsha glanced at Kandi before answering, and the look alone made Kandi's breath catch. He talked to Dunnan, she said slowly. He vented to him, complained to him, planned with him. A wave of shock rippled across the benches. Don Juan, backstage confidant, longtime friend, inner circle, a name no one expected. Kandi blinked hard, her face twisting with disbelief. Don Juan, she whispered. My friend. Porsha nodded. Your friend? Yes, but also the person Todd turned to when he felt guilty, when he wanted advice, when he wanted to vent about having two lives at once. Todd finally lifted his head, eyes wild with panic. That's not what happened. But Porsha cut him off. You told him everything, Todd. You told him you didn't know how to leave her. You told him you didn't know how to keep me quiet. You told him you were scared of choosing wrong. The room was stunned. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was infiltration, emotional treason from inside Kandi's closest circle. Kandi's face collapsed. Don Juan knew, she whispered. All these years he knew. Todd didn't answer. He couldn't. His silence was a confession written in real time. A murmur started in the back of the courtroom. Whispers, gasps, disbelief. People turning to each other with wide, horrified eyes. Even the judge looked shaken. This was no longer a marriage issue. This was a collapse of loyalty across several levels. Porsha continued, her tone flat, the kind of honesty that offered no comfort. He told Don Juan he was torn. He told him he wished he could split himself in two. But the part that mattered most was this. She lifted another note, reading directly from it. I can't leave her. I need her name, her power, her stability. Without her, I'm nobody. Kandi stopped breathing for a moment. That sentence hit her like a physical punch. Years of partnership, love, building a life reduced to usefulness. Not meaning, not loyalty, usefulness. Todd opened his mouth, but nothing came out. His throat tightened, his eyes watered. He looked like he wanted to swallow the words back into his body, erase them somehow, deny them, but it was too late. They were written, they were read, they were real. The judge finally stepped in, voice heavy with the weight of everything he had heard. Ms. Williams, is there more? Porsha hesitated, not because she didn't have more, but because the next truth was too heavy even for her. She stared at Todd for a long moment, giving him a final chance to stop her, to speak up, to apologize, to take ownership of something, but he didn't. And that silence gave her permission. There is one final recording, she said quietly. One that explains why Todd stopped everything. Why he distanced himself from me. Why he suddenly tried to act like the perfect husband again. The courtroom stilled. Porsha reached into her purse again and pulled out her phone. This is the night he told me it had to end. Not because he wanted it to, but because someone warned him. The judge raised an eyebrow. Warned him? Who? People leaned in so hard the benches actually creaked. Porsha pressed play. Todd's voice filled the courtroom. Tired, panicked, quiet. She's starting to suspect. She checked my phone. I can't sleep anymore. If she finds out everything, it's over for me. Don Juan said, I need to cool this off before she starts digging. The gasp that tore through the courtroom was louder than a shout. People covered their mouths. A reporter whispered, this is career-ending. Someone in the back muttered, oh, he's done. Kandi stared straight ahead, hollow, unblinking. This wasn't betrayal anymore. This was strategy. A calculated campaign to keep his double life hidden. Her voice cracked when she finally spoke. So, it wasn't guilt. It was fear. You didn't stop because you loved me. You stopped because you didn't want to lose what I gave you. Todd stepped toward her. Kandi, please don't. Her scream echoed so sharply, the court officers jumped. Do not come near me. Do not say my name. Do not pretend this is anything other than manipulation. Tears streamed down Todd's face, but no amount of tears could rewrite the truth. Now documented across notes, recordings, USB files, and years of whispered confessions. The judge called for order. Again, but even he sounded shaken. This wasn't a normal case. This was a catastrophic implosion of a public marriage. And then came the moment no one in the room expected. Not Porsha, not Todd, not even the spectators who had been waiting for chaos. Kandi stood. Everyone watched her like she was rising from ashes. Fragile, trembling, destroyed, but standing anyway. Her voice was steady, but laced with heartbreak and steel. Your Honor, I don't want revenge. I don't want money. I don't want apologies. I just want the truth documented. For the record, for my sanity, for my future. She turned to Todd, tears replacing anger. You used me to look strong. You used me to look stable, but you never loved me the way you said. Todd shook his head desperately. I did love you. No, she whispered. You loved the version of me that made your life easier. And you loved her when you needed attention. You never loved Emmy. Todd collapsed back into his chair. Broken, exposed, finished. Porsha lowered her eyes.
The
war was over. The truth had been spoken and nothing more could be added without turning wounds into scars. The judge called a recess. Reporters sprinted out of the courtroom like they'd witnessed history because they had cameras flashed, doors slammed, people shouted updates into microphones. Inside, Kandi walked toward the exit, moving slowly, each step heavy with betrayal. But she didn't look back. Not once. Todd tried to stand, but his legs shook too hard. His entire world was slipping through his fingers, and he had no one to blame but himself. Porsha remained still. She hadn't won. There were no winners here. Only truth, devastation, and silence. As Kandi reached the doorway, the courtroom held its breath, waiting for her last word. She paused, turned slightly, and said quietly, I'll heal, but the secrets, they stay. And then she walked out, leaving behind the ruins of everything they once pretended to be. What happened inside that courtroom wasn't just a scandal. It was a full-scale emotional demolition. The kind of collapse people replay in their minds long after the cameras stopped rolling. Kandi didn't just walk out of that room hurt. She walked out transformed. Todd didn't just lose a marriage. He lost the version of himself he tried so desperately to protect. And Porsha, she didn't walk away victorious. She walked away with the weight of the truth she carried for years finally lifted, even if it left destruction behind. And now the world is buzzing. Social media is split down the middle. Fans are arguing. Blogs are posting from every angle. People are choosing sides they don't fully understand. Because when secrets this big come crashing down, nobody escapes untouched. Not the marriage, not the friendship circle, not the public image, not even the viewers. But the real question isn't what happened in the courtroom. It's what happens next. Does Kandi recover or disappear into silence? Does Todd try to rebuild or crumble under public pressure? Does Porsha speak again or let the truth stand on its own? And what happens to everyone caught in the blast radius? Because trust me, this story isn't done. Not remotely. The aftermath is where the real chaos begins. So, what do you think after watching this emotional collapse unfold in real time? Was Porsha justified? Was Todd hiding more than what came out? And will Kandi ever forgive anyone involved, including herself? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We're reading everything. Hit that subscribe button, because this story is far from over. And turn on notifications because we have updates coming that will shake the internet all over again. This wasn't just a courtroom disaster. This was a turning point, and the secrets are still not done speaking.